Welcome back to Clean Titans. Today, we're incredibly excited to sit down with a true innovator in the clean energy space, Patrick Sherwin, founder and CEO of GoSun. Patrick, your journey from installing solar systems in the 2000s to leading GoSun's mission to make clean tech accessible is truly inspiring. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ali. It's so nice to be here on Clean Titans. What an honor.
Patrick, you've described yourself as an inventor and social entrepreneur. What initially drew you to commit your professional life to clean technology, and how has that initial spark evolved into the mission you pursue today at GoSun?
Wow. You have such big questions, and I love that. I guess I learned early on how destructive humans can be, how idiotic we can be, and I've just wanted to come up with solutions to address that, and mainly to further my appreciation and love for the great outdoors and nature, and further our ability to stay on this beautiful planet.
You mentioned working on solutions to create a healthy, resilient future. Can you give us an example of an early challenge you faced in your career in renewables that really solidified your commitment to this path?
I think it goes back for me to like an origin story scenario when I was just a boy. I was probably 8 years old and I was working as a little entrepreneur, built a little store in the honeysuckle in the backyard. And I had a little creek in the backyard. And I worked with a bunch of other neighborhood kids to rehabilitate this creek over the course of one summer. And we had it full of fish and amphibians. And then a neighbor, it was like a 20-year-old neighbor, took the oil from his vehicle, from his truck, and poured it into the creek to get rid of it. And I watched all those fish and amphibians struggle, if not die, over the course of the next week from that oil spill. And again, realizing how idiotic we are and how ignorantly destructive we are, that sent me on a path of solutions. I'm kind of just an engineer, tinkerer, problem solver, and I know that we can do better. And so if we can continue to have the great lifestyles that we have, but without the destructive side of it, that's great. So I've just been trying to come up with ways to run our lives in less destructive ways. And that has led me to the sun.
Excellent. How do you balance the inventor's drive for breakthrough technology with the social entrepreneur's focus on appropriate technology and measurable impact? Where do those two roles intersect most effectively for you?
Yeah, I think that really, you stay focused on problems that there's so many problems, but if you stay focused on problems that are pretty immediate, things that I have effectively have dealt with when I was off grid or living in an austere environment, you know, things like access to water, access to the ability to cook, store food. And it turns out that when you address those problems, you're also creating a healthy impact. So it's, to me, being an entrepreneur has not been, being an inventor and being an entrepreneur have been mutually inclusive. They've been the same thing. Most entrepreneurs, I believe, are interested in changing the world more so than, kind of making money. And when you're trying to change the world, you're addressing a real problem. And when you do produce a real solution, customers will be found. So for me, kind of, that's just been my path. It is, as a very hands-on person, I always like to make sure that my work stays action-oriented and isn't in the theoretical or in the laboratory, or never makes its way out into the field. I've had plenty of prototypes fail. I've had lots of experiments crash and burn. But to me, there's just so much of a joy in the pursuit of coming up with real viable solutions that people can use on a daily basis. So it's been a really fun ride.
You're familiar with the solar coaster's ups and downs. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that? What have been some of the most significant downs, or challenges you faced in the solar industry? And crucially, what lessons did you learn that helped you navigate them?
No doubt. My career early on is really great. I jumped into solar about 25 years ago, and a lot of it was off grid. And you were, again, addressing a real need. Somebody needed lights or water pumping or something critical because they didn't have any other source of power. And then the industry just kept growing, and I grew with it to the point where I was doing all this work, related to spreadsheets and return on investments and accelerated depreciation schedules and wearing suits and going into boardrooms. And I lost a lot of the heart of the matter, or a lot of the focus on a real viable solution. And I got less and less creative, less and less interested or inspired in the work. So jumping off of that solar coaster and becoming an inventor and building consumer products for GoSun was kind of the ultimate dream, or the right path for me, that kept me more engaged and passionate about the work, and again about the kind of real factor of solutions affecting someone's life directly or immediately. So I think basically, like, when your work gets heartless, when you find yourself doing something that doesn't feel good or doesn't matter to you very much, that's when you need to really soul search to consider whether you've got to come up with something else. Like, I felt a lack of service, as if the consumers didn't really care so much about the solution. They just wanted to see how it was going to affect their bank account. And that just didn't really make my day. It didn't make me so happy to pursue these giant projects. And too many times on the solar coaster, the solar installation integration business, too many times you would do all kinds of work to pursue a project and win a contract, and only to find that they chose the lowest bidder, or they chose somebody else after you had spent 3 weeks pursuing this, and 70 hours of hard work to put together a proposal. And so it just really became soul crushing, and not in a horribly negative way, but I knew that I needed to find something else to keep me more engaged in my work. I'm not so motivated specifically by the pursuit of more money. I'm mostly motivated by the power of an idea and the impact available to the world.
Got to keep that flame alive inside, right?
Absolutely.
On the flip side, what have been some of the most exhilarating ups or breakthroughs that kept you motivated through those challenges?
GoSun has been a super exhilarating ride, a solar coaster of a different sort. And I love pursuing down an idea. So we have like a giant list of ideas, many of which will never see the light of day. And then every quarter we go into that list and we rank them and search out and try to discover products that are ready for development cycle. And that the beginning of a development cycle for us, basically like when the idea starts going into concept, into its first really rough proof of concept or looks alike prototype, that's a super exciting moment for me. And I love like spinning the narrative around a product where I can try to encourage others to relate to it, to where we can have others begin to provide feedback. And so it's the combination of developing the concept and not the highest level of engineering element, but the part where you're just really figuring out what this is going to look and feel like, and the same thing around the messaging and the storytelling related to the product. So it never stops. That cycle of being an inventor and a storyteller is really thrilling. And GoSun has led probably 10 major innovations in sort of consumer solar goods over the last decade. And with each one, you get the chance to use that prototype for the first time. I get to go off and live with the thing, and spend a week camping in the remote, deep woods with the product. And to me, that's just an absolute joy to kind of practice what I preach.
Let's talk about GoSun. You founded the company with the goal of making outdoor cooking easier, cleaner, and more accessible. What was the aha moment that led you to focus on solar cooking and portable energy solutions?
I was in Haiti in, I think it was like 2003, my first trip there. And I had already been interested in solar cooking And I just realized there, looking at how people cooked, that this was a major opportunity, that there was a huge issue. And indeed, there's like 3 billion people cooking with wood and charcoal in the world on a daily basis. So a third of the world.
Or
And
kerosene and burning themselves.
yeah, and then causing like smoke inhalation, one of the leading causes of preventable death in the world. So it's basically time in the developing world was really integral for my interest in the development of solar cooking. And so when I first came up with a vacuum tube solar oven, like this image behind me, that was like such a breakthrough and an aha that you could cook inside one of these vacuum tubes, that I knew I was onto something. But it took me like 7 years of playing around with vacuum tube ovens before I came up with the GoSun. And then I launched that on Kickstarter, and that's where the business really got going. And initially, we were focused heavily on bringing this technology to the developing world, and that was such a huge thrust of our interest in being a social enterprise and making big impacts. We have since learned how difficult that side of our work is. We have spent countless hours and resources in developing world environments, Guatemala, Kenya, Nepal, India, tons of stuff in South America and Central America. And most of those efforts have not created fruits, have not yet yielded much of a business. And so we haven't been spending tons and tons of time into those sectors. I regret to say that, but it's a very big challenge to get people to change their cooking behaviors. And so that's where, GoSun had to pivot and become much more than just a solar cooking company, and also had to pivot in some of our business model, which we initially had planned to focus in emerging markets. And we basically went, and stuck with the customers who are super happy with our tech here in the States, Europe, Australia, Japan.
You really have to build a recipe book or somehow teach people a whole culture around it, to teach them how to cook with solar, I guess, to change their behaviors.
No doubt. Yeah.
Did you experiment with something like M-Pesa, where in Africa they're using cell phone payment system to pay as you go, so you can get the solar cooker, but you don't have to pay for it upfront, and you pay for it slowly monthly, and you can put a device that would make the solar cooker not work if they didn't pay.
We definitely explored that. I went to a bunch of conferences and hit our product in Africa, and Pay As You Go Solar has done amazing things in sub-Saharan Africa. But our technology is passive solar, meaning you're working with heat. You're taking sunlight and creating heat instead of creating electricity. And so there aren't any controls. Like our solar ovens don't require any circuit boards, circuitry. So we didn't have that ability. And they're similarly priced to photovoltaic systems, the solar PV with batteries and LED lights and the pay-as-you-go systems. So say those are $200 and our solar oven's $200. But to get electricity to have lights and the ability to charge your phone and listen to the radio was far more interesting and valuable to families than to have the ability to cook a meal in a vacuum tube. Again, that change that would be required to teach somebody to cook a meal in this vacuum tube was so much more dramatic than the change, or than building the market for them to have electricity.
GoSun's core technology, utilizing concentrated solar power for cooking without fuel, is quite innovative. Can you briefly explain the science behind it for our audience? What makes it so efficient?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to remove a solar water heater off of a roof that had been installed in the 80s, and it was made of what's called evacuated tubes. And I took the unit home, and instead of throwing it away, I started tinkering on it. I discovered that it was a phenomenal way to cook hot dogs. And then again, it took me years and years to come up with like a consumer friendly portable stove. But the secret to the technology is a vacuum between two layers of tough Pyrex glass. The outer layer of glass is clear, so sunlight can pass through it, kind of like the greenhouse effect. And the inner layer is coated to catch the sun, turn it into heat, and then bounce and entrap that infrared radiation to the inside where the cooking happens. The cooking happens in a stainless steel tray. I've got a solar oven right here. I don't know how much emphasis we should put on the camera, but I can show you more details. But basically, the vacuum is so well insulated that you can cook on nearly any day of the year. Partly cloudy weather, slightly overcast, freezing cold, super windy. Do need light from the sun. We also back up all of our ovens now with 12-volt heating elements. And what's interesting about that is, again, since you're cooking in a super well insulated vacuum chamber, the amount of electricity that you need is about 1/10 of a typical stove or microwave. So you're saving huge amounts of energy based on the fact that the environment is so super well insulated.
Beyond cooking, GoSun has expanded into solar coolers and power generators. What's the strategic thinking behind broadening GoSun's product line? Are you aiming to be a comprehensive off grid clean energy provider?
Exactly. Solar cooking is probably one of the smallest industries that you can find in the world. It's just tiny, tiny, tiny. And uh, we knew that there was plenty more solutions that could be solar powered with today's readily available technology. If you can think of a solution, you can pretty much build it. And everything's getting more and more efficient, so that means it's easier and easier to run it on the sun or on lithium energy storage technology. And so we knew we had to pivot. So we started to build out like the entire solar powered kitchen. We went into portable refrigeration that doesn't use ice. We made a water purification and sanitation system during COVID. We made a coffee brewing solution. So because there's all these fire bans in campsites and stuff out west, a bunch of other accessories for personal comfort. And we didn't stop there. We ended up building like an off-grid camper that's ultra light through a collaboration with another company. We made a solar electric boat. And then more recently, we've developed a way to charge your car with the sun using flexible portable solar tech that fit on the roof of the car. And when parked, you dispatch a large solar array, and you can meet, average daily driving needs with just the available sunshine that falls on the car. So, basically the sky is not the limit for GoSun. We are an innovation machine, and we're constantly working to find solar solutions to power everyday life for recreation and resilience.
You mentioned the impact in both developed and emerging markets. How does GoSun's approach differ when addressing energy needs in a remote village without grid access compared to, say, a family camping in the US?
Yeah, our focus has really been more on the latter. Initially, we thought our oven technology would do better in developing world environments, but after 4 or 5 years pursuit and lots of resources, we had to back off and basically focus in developed markets. We still have a few things going in emerging markets, pilot programs and a few village level entrepreneurs that are sharing our tech. We aren't aggressively investing in that space at the moment based on the headwinds that we have faced, the difficulties that we have faced, mainly with cultural adoption. And that doesn't mean that people don't want our technology in a remote developing country environment. It just means that we haven't done the work to convince them why they need it, want to pay for it, build the market for it, build the distribution channels, the customer support, and all of that. It takes nearly $250,000 per country to build an effective business in order to really achieve sustainable enterprise. And we haven't gone through that in a very concerted effort on just picking Kenya and sticking with it for 3 or 5 years in order to get that business totally off the ground and on its own. There are some other companies that have done that. There's BioLite Energy came up with a cook stove that runs on twigs, that runs on small wood burning. And they have gone and done other stuff in Africa. And I'm very jealous, or I'm very impressed with what they've done. And it turns out that even their cooking technology, which is fire-based, is not very popular in those environments. It's really their other electronic products. And they've done a lot with like solar electric lighting and stuff that's really gone and scaled. And so we hope to get into that market in future. But at the moment, we're still really focused in developed world markets where customers already know about solar and have like a more concerted interest and need to use the sun.
GoSun has seen significant growth with the revenue records and ongoing innovation. What has been the biggest driver of GoSun's commercial success? Is it the technology itself, the growing demand for off grid solutions, or perhaps a unique approach to marketing and community building?
Boy, great question. I mean, it's probably all of those things. We're not the highest tech business that you would ever find that's trying to integrate the world's greatest AI with 1,000 software developers. We're really good at taking existing technology and kind of what they call ad hoc inventions, where you adapt them for new uses and apply several different emerging technologies into one. Our tech is huge. I think the innovation machine is probably the biggest driver of our success. So we launched probably on average 5 innovations every year. Like 2 years ago, we literally launched like 15 new products. It's probably too much, but that just tells you how creative our team has been and how many solution sets we believe are needed out there. Things like we launched a heated seat and we launched a fan. Now, why? Well, because, if you want to stay cool in the summer, then put a fan on you. It's 85 degrees out. When a fan is blowing some air across your body, you're probably comfortable. Uh, in the winter, when it's freezing cold and you're in a building that's 55 degrees, you're too cold. Well, if you sit down on a seat that's 85 degrees, all of a sudden you're pretty comfortable. So those two inventions are super duper efficient at keeping you comfortable versus heating the entire space. So these are just the ways we look at things and why we come up with innovations and move them very quickly out into the market. And then we let the market tell us how great it is. We don't pretend, we don't over market something, especially if it's not resonating with the consumer body. But it's that innovation machine that has led us to, for example, this EV solar charger that we now have $8 million in pre-sales stacking up for. And we will be ahead of the competition on the next great leap of how to use solar to further thriving on this planet.
I can attest to that heated pad because I had a Chevy Bolt that I got back in 2018, and it had heated seats and heated steering wheel. And cold weather, freezing cold weather, it was amazing how well it kept you warm without necessarily cranking up the heater and warming up the whole car. You've engaged in investment rounds like the one mentioned on Start Engine. What has been your experience with attracting impact investors or those interested in supporting a solar powered revolution? What advice would you give to other clean tech startups seeking similar funding?
Yeah, since we originally launched the business through Kickstarter, we're kind of a crowd-funded company. I mean, when I first came up with the solar oven invention, the GoSun Sport, maybe 15 years ago, I knew it was like a product that really needed to be seen to the consumer world. I couldn't raise money on it. And so I took it to crowdfunding. Like, in other words, a bank wasn't going to give me a loan on an invention, which I think it's sad, but that's the world that we live in. And I didn't have a bunch of millionaires that I could just knock on their door and say, hey, please help me out here. So I went to crowdfunding and I said, hey, if you want to buy this thing, I've got a bunch of them that work, they're prototypes, but I'm not into production yet. If you want to buy it, then please give us a couple $100 today and I'll ship it to you in 6 months. And once it's actually available in production and in the inventory in the warehouse here, it'll be $350. So you're getting 50% off or 40% off today. And that model worked super well for GoSun, for me, for our kind of innovation cycle. And it has continued to work. Taking that model a little step further, we found it was the Jobs Act in 2008 that enables non-accredited investors, basically common people, probably like you and I, to have the ability to invest in early stage companies, which was previously only available to like venture capitalists. And we saw that it's called equity crowdfunding, and we thought this is perfect for GoSun. I might have talked to some venture capitalists, but they were interested in software apps. Nowadays, they're only interested in AI. And so you're not going to raise $1 million with a hardware startup like Start Engine. It's very hard to do that. But yet people still need things like physical things that meet and address real physical needs like clean water and refrigeration and cooking. And so we went through equity crowdfunding to say, hey, customers or anyone else that can find us on the internet, if you're interested, we are available at this valuation for you to own shares in this young emerging company that someday should be a 9-figure company, hopefully, and be publicly traded. That's the dream and the hope of any entrepreneur, but that's absolutely the direction that we're trying to go. And through equity crowdfunding, we have basically allowed 5,000 investors to join our pursuit in achieving that goal of climbing this mountain and getting to the point where we are able to do an IPO. And through that process, we've been able to generate around $5 million of investment, which has supported and fueled our innovation cycle. So it's been a huge help for the GoSun team. And again, it's kind of everyone's taking a vote of confidence saying, keep doing what you're doing. We know you're getting somewhere really important.
Looking at the wider clean energy transition, particularly in the context of your channel of distribution, what are some of the most exciting, groundbreaking technologies you're seeing beyond GoSun's immediate focus that have the potential for massive impact?
The low cost reality of solar in general, mainly like utility scale solar, but of course, even rooftop solar. It's mind blowing what that means and what that does to the energy economy. You know, I've been a long believer of solar. I've been in the energy space. I've been in solar installs for 25 years. Uh, it's it's cheaper than I dreamt of when I first started, and that means that it's not just on parity with grid power, but it's actually cheaper. It's basically the cheapest form of energy on the planet. And so spelling that out in the writings on the wall, it's like we don't actually need fossil fuels anymore. And I guess, again, I'm a big picture thinker, so there isn't a specific technology I'm speaking of here other than, solar and energy storage. They are absolutely here to stay. They are absolutely economically viable. I wish we could remove all subsidies and all kind of government interplay in our energy reality so that you really see the truth to all of this, because the fossil fuel industry is heavily subsidized. And electrification, is definitely the way to go. I think we're all seeing that. We're seeing that change even on American roadways. The electric cars are completely incredible. And I guess a real exciting element to all of this is sort of vehicle to grid or vehicle to load. So basically, how your car, which has like a giant battery, say Tesla Model Y long range, has nearly 100 kilowatt hours on wheels, can then become like a backup generator for your home or business or community during a grid outage. And so basically, the vehicle is becoming a source of resiliency, plugging in, plugging out, and supporting a load or supporting the grid when it's peaking and things of that nature. So, smart grid, isolated grids, microgrids, these things have long been of great interest to me. I've built a bunch of that stuff, and we're really starting to see where the vehicle is becoming a main contributor to grid stabilization. And it's just one small player on that big clean energy transition, but it's happening.
Are there any innovative business models that you think are truly disruptive or are accelerating the adoption of clean energy in ways we haven't seen before?
Well, I'm certainly paying attention and interested in, the buzzwords around circular economies. I've seen a lot more of those business models emerge in Europe. I think as Mondragon, town in Spain that has a union cooperative model is super interesting. I mean, we have to use business as a mechanism to do good and not just support the pockets of the 0.001%. Business is a mechanism of exchange, and the exchange that's beyond just the dollar is what's most interesting to me. There's so much more that can be measured: gross domestic happiness and the happiness of the community, of the employee, the workers. That stuff is very important to me. And I don't think that much of the Western world has figured that out. I don't think capitalism is serving a ton of people. And I think we need to really work more in finding more balanced models that distribute wealth and bring more people up and along with it, rather than just the high level executive business owner. So
You've been in the solar industry since 2000. How has the perception and adoption of clean energy, especially solar, changed among the general public and policymakers over these 2 decades? What's been the biggest shift you've observed?
I would just say not enough. There has not been enough of a shift. I'm kind of surprised at how poor the solar conversation is here. I'm in the middle of America. I'm in Ohio, breadbasket, the center and the purple of the country. Again, I'm not talking politics, but if you can make something work in Ohio, you can make it work anywhere. And my buddies in the solar industry are kicking butt. They are doing so well. The economics are incredible, even where utility power is super, super cheap. So my point is, I can't believe more people don't know about that, and more people aren't buzzing about the crazy boon or growth of solar as at large in the dominant culture of our country. I think we're in general, we're kind of laggards when it comes to clean technology. And I think culturally we have some like old stain. I mean, when I first started in the industry, there was the stain from the late 70s, early 80s. There was this massive solar credit. Jimmy Carter, kind of the godfather of the solar energy industry, had done a huge credit for solar water heating, and the industry wasn't ready at the time. So there's all these fly by night kind of snake oil solar salesmen way back in the 70s, and they sunburned a lot of customers. A lot of the systems that were installed at that era didn't work beyond a few years. The first real freeze would ruin the pipes or something. And so that left a bad taste in people's mouths. And then the industry really limped along in the 80s and 90s, and then in the 2000s, kind of when I entered, it was always like, it's too expensive, you're just hippy dippy, you just leave them on the sidelines. And of course, leadership and utilities, and nobody ever gave solar a chance. To be honest, like, the industry did not get a lot of support, period, ever. And that's still more or less true. But here we are in 2025, and solar is it's the cheapest, most competitive form of power on the planet. We're still kind of treating it like it's still 2000. That stuff doesn't really work. It's too expensive. It's just a bunch of hippy dippy technology. They don't know what they're doing. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. Solar guys know what they're doing. It's cheap as could be, and it's meeting base load on a level that's never been seen before across the world.
Yeah, if there are no barriers, no subsidies, no tariffs, solar would just take off like crazy. It is happening in global south. If it can happen in places like that, then it can happen everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically like, it's the next. It is the, I don't know, fourth industrial revolution. Like, a new industrial revolution has occurred. AI is certainly a part of it, but it's being led by clean tech. And unfortunately, America is definitely not a leader. We're certainly, like, probably the world's biggest player, or a key player. Yeah, but China's kicking our ass, and they're China doesn't have the natural resources that the U.S. does, specifically oil, gas, and coal. And so they had to figure this out. And sure as heck, they have. And when it comes to EVs, solar, and wind, China is running circles around us. And that's a real shame. I think that if we want to be competitive in a real way, we should be there should be way more GoSuns out there than there are today. I can't believe I'm one of the few companies that's really building portable consumer solar products.
Australia's got 1 in 3 homes have solar, and they're starting to really push batteries now.
Exactly.
What do you see as the biggest remaining hurdles to achieving a truly sustainable, decentralized energy future, particularly from a policy or infrastructure perspective?
Well, people, I would say, would be the answer there. People and their propensity to want more and want too much and be greedy and perpetuate the cycle that has given them the wealth that they have. If again, if you just removed subsidies across the board, if you had a level playing field, you'd see solar go nuts. And unfortunately, there's too many powers that be that the same people that are trying to push manipulate the reality of the climate science, where it's global warming doesn't exist. It's not happening. It's like, yeah, when 100 scientists are asked about it and they do the research and they 99 of them say, yeah, it's definitely happening and it's definitely human induced. It's definitely problematic. I usually take the word of the scientists, but ideology wins in America right now. Ideology, basically a belief, which is not knowing, it's not data centric, it's not based on science. If climate change is inconvenient and they don't want to believe in it, they're just allowed to do that. And then they're going to fight and push back against anything that's new and different, like solar or wind, which is ironic because oil and coal and gas is new and different if you went back 150 years ago. They think that people think that we're entitled to it and we're entrenched in it and it's the only way to move forward, but it's certainly not the case. It wasn't the case 150 years ago, and it's certainly not going to be the case in 150 years from now. Like, if we don't figure out how to get off oil and coal, like, there isn't 150 years from now for humanity on the planet. We're kind of in that little Goldilocks. And hopefully you've heard this before if you're listening, but this should not be new. We got to figure out how to do the same thing we're doing, but with a lot less of a carbon impact. And I'm not that excited about carbon capture technology. I just don't think that that's necessarily going to get us out of the mess that we've created. I'm not that excited about hanging out and retiring on Mars. Like, I
Yeah.
kind of like it here.
Well, Mars is an unforgiving place. All these technologies are so cheap, we don't really need to do carbon capture. We don't need to keep burning. Uh, I had the Dr. Joe Rom earlier, and he was saying that the huge amount of property in coastal areas that's going to come under stress is going to make that 2008 subprime mortgage debacle a small potatoes. And our system is based on stability. Just this little bit of tariff stuff caused a lot of instability for the economy and the stock market. Imagine the instability that will come when whole maps in coastal areas will be redrawn, whole cities will drown.
Yeah.
The Clean Titans channel aims to empower our audience to become part of the change. For individuals who are inspired by GoSun's mission or the broader clean energy revolution, what are one or two practical steps they can take today to contribute to the transition, whether as consumers, advocates, or even aspiring entrepreneurs?
Oh, I guess that's kind of our whole mission, or that's what we do is and I know that, selling a product may not be it may not be the answer, but we basically try to make sure that solar has a foot in the door for a larger conversation on how to transition to clean living, clean tech. So our solar ovens, like, we have a $50 solar oven that can cook a meal in 20 minutes with nothing but sunshine, and that's a cool first step. That's our gateway drug for getting into this deeper, longer conversation on solarizing your whole house and driving on sunshine and all of that. But just carrying on a healthy conversation and being willing to ask difficult questions. Um, it's certainly not going to, the answer is not going to be in just one little product purchase or one small lifestyle change. It's a huge lifelong pursuit, and it's not easy being green. So, I saw something interesting. I don't mind it when somebody does virtue signaling, but I would much prefer if they didn't just virtue signal, that they would actually do the good thing over and over and over and not need to be seen doing it. It's going to be a long path, and cooperating and communicating and acknowledging that you may not know, and you're not going to achieve the lifestyle of off-grid purity and sustainability anytime soon. So, just kind of enjoy, kind of thrive or kind of elegant frugality, being able to live a really beautiful life without having to own a yacht and jet set around the world all the time to be happy. I mean, happiness is literally right under your nose and right around the corner at all times. So trying to live a balanced life where you can thrive. I just got notified by my Tesla that I finally stopped charging for the day. I've been charging my car on the sun since I arrived here at work at 9 a.m. So is that 6 hours, and I've achieved right before thus far 8% battery increase. So I'll literally be driving home, and I'm going to drive across town on sunshine today. So it's the little things, and it's a bunch of little things. That's all.
Using GoSun car charger?
Right.
Great. Yeah. Let's do a quick fire round. Most underrated clean energy technology right now.
Lithium ion energy storage. It's super cheap. And people don't realize how cheap it is. So cheap. It's mind blowing. I put so much emphasis on lithium energy storage over the years, and it's pretty much always delivered. It's always shot power back where I need it. When I first got started in the industry, they were all lead acid batteries, and a huge pain in the butt. And I'm so excited to get rid of lead in my life.
One piece of conventional wisdom about clean energy you disagree with?
Oh, I guess more solar is good solar. Well, not entirely true. You need to do energy efficiency first, and what are called negawatts, or basically, make all your loads much more efficient, or turn them off and manage them appropriately. Insulate, air seal, get the Energy Star appliance. Do all of that before you put more solar up.
Your biggest hope for the clean energy sector in the next 5 years?
Good leadership. Leadership matters. It certainly has affected the conversation or the cultural focus in the media and stuff. And I'd love to see someone who's really more practical, more of an engineer, and have the conversation really in government, providing effective incentives to drive a clean energy revolution.
Your biggest fear for the clean energy sector if we don't accelerate?
Innovation stops. Innovation is very sensitive, and it needs safety. It needs security. It needs stability. And innovation doesn't happen when everyone's fearful or when you're in a war, or maybe innovations do around how to kill people, but I don't think that's what we need more of. So I'm worried that, that innovators and people that are pushing a clean climate change oriented solution set are persecuted or something.
Finally, Patrick, if you could paint a picture of the world 20 years from now, with GoSun's continued impact and the broader clean energy revolution in full swing, what does that sustainable future look like to you?
You might be able to find something like it I think you'd probably find it in like Northern Europe or something, where, again, I think it's about people and the cultural reality of them taking care of each other. That doesn't mean that there aren't disparity and there isn't rich and poor, but maybe not to the extent that we're seeing it. It probably means that there's access to good, clean, affordable healthcare and healthy food that's like actual vegetables that are grown in farms, small farms and gardens. That, in the last like 3 generations, most of humanity has given away its ability to build its own shelter, take care of its own food and water, build its own clothing, and create its own energy, and transportation. I'm not trying to go back to where, you only had a horse and buggy and like the Amish or something, but I would like to see people more empowered. I feel like people have lost a lot of the control, the innate human abilities that we were given to be able to, again, be able to take care of ourselves, hunt and gather and forage, and to live in an abundant place, where we're not fighting over resources, and we're not kind of backstabbing each other in the process.
Well, with solar, you can gather your energy every day for free.
Yeah, it's like duh. If you could do that, why wouldn't you do it?
Right.
We have all this pushback with people like you'll never take my truck from me. I'm so independent. It's like really. So you're importing crude oil from Saudi Arabia into Texas, getting refined, throwing it in a pipeline, sending it up to Ohio, coming out of the corner gas station. Like that is somehow more independent than the roof of your truck making its own power and making its own fuel.
Yeah. And wherever you get that barrel of oil from, the next one is harder to get to because you just burn it and it's done.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
what role do you see individuals rather than just large corporations or governments playing in bringing that future to fruition?
I mean, it's still all about the individual, right? I mean, it's a choice that you make every day. I know it's not easy because we're stuck in a system. Unfortunately, I see too many young people with the mentality of getting rich and being glamorous on Instagram and all that. And it's like it's just sort of to me, it's sort of sad, that people would focus so much of their lives on money and the kind of the ideology that's around it versus living a balanced and healthy life that is more centered around having great friends or good community and good health. I'm rambling again. You offer me with all these great big picture questions. I don't think it's really that hard. To live a good life, but happiness does require a lot of elements: exercise, the sleep, the good food, and when you do that, you're going to be so much more for yourself, your relationships, and your society. So I try to be happy.
Well said. Patrick, this has been an incredibly insightful and inspiring conversation. Thank you for sharing your journey and the incredible work you're doing at GoSun and your vision for the future. Where can our audience connect with you and learn more about GoSun?
Thanks, Ali. It's been a pleasure. You can find all about us at gosun.co, our website. There is no M there, gosun.co. And we're at GoSun on all kinds of social media platforms. And then those interested in looking at our investment round, you can learn more at startengine.com/GoSun. And that's GOSUN. So thanks so much.
We'll include that link in the description for this video. Thank you again, Patrick, for being a true clean titan. To our viewers, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Clean Titans for more exclusive interviews, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our next discussion with the innovators shaping our sustainable future. See you next time.